You're saying that in order to be convinced that awareness is the reality of your experience, you have to be able to access every object that has appeared in your awareness. In other words, every memory that you have ever had. You have to go back to each one.
No, not each one. Just enough to, I haven't been everywhere in the world.
But the objects tell us nothing about awareness. You don't need a single memory to know the nature of awareness.
No, but my experience, when you bring us through in a meditation, what I find so useful is that I don't have to believe anything. I can check everything.
Yes.
And that is good. What I want to do, to check out experientially that it's not just a memory of a birthday.
No, I appreciate your experiential approach, but I'm just questioning why you feel you need to visit all these objects in order to ascertain the nature of consciousness. Objects tell us nothing about consciousness. Even visiting one object tells us nothing about consciousness, let alone visiting all the objects or experiences you have ever had. If you want to find out about consciousness, you have to give consciousness your attention. That's the only way to find out about it.
But isn't consciousness representing itself to me as experiences?
No. Consciousness is representing itself to you, that is, to itself,
awareness,
as itself. It's just, if I asked you the question now, are you aware? What would you say?
Yeah, of course, yes.
In other words, awareness is representing itself to itself as the experience of being aware.
Yes, I get that.
It's not representing itself to itself as an object.
But what do you mean then when you say when awareness modulates itself as mind?
Well, that's how awareness takes the form of an apparent object. But awareness doesn't need the object in order to reflect its knowledge of itself back to itself.
That's true.
This is I see now where we are. This is a very important point. Most people, or many people that get involved in this kind of exploration, and most people in general, feel that consciousness needs the body-mind to know itself. That consciousness needs to appear in the form of the body-mind in order to mirror itself back to itself. That's not true. Consciousness doesn't need a body-mind to know itself. It knows itself by itself.
But how can I know that?
By asking yourself the question, am
but
I aware?
I'm asking myself that, with a mind, a body.
You're asking the question, okay,
yeah.
Let's go through the process again. Ask yourself the question, or let me ask you the question, are you aware?
Yes.
Okay, now, the question, are you aware, is a thought. That's the first thought, yes? Are you aware? That thought comes to an end. Now, there's a second thought, which is your response, yes. That's also a thought, yes? Now, before the end of the first thought, are you aware, we're still not sure that we are aware. The question hasn't come to an end yet. We're asking, am I aware? Pause. Yes. Somewhere between the end of the first thought and the beginning of the second thought, something takes place.
Yes.
Which is called the experience of being aware that I am aware.
Yes.
It takes place in between the end of the first thought and the beginning of the second thought. Now, in that in-between space, in that gap in between these two thoughts, in which the experience, I am aware, takes place, no thought is present, yes?
Yeah.
And therefore no time is present. So at the end of this thought, to go to the experience of being aware, we literally go out of time. We fall into eternity.
It also feels like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is why deep sleep feels timeless. because it takes place between two dreams, which means between two thoughts. Between two thoughts there is no mind, there is no time. It's truly timeless. So the mind says it is nothing, it wasn't there, because the mind can only see objects. So the mind thinks it's one thought, followed immediately by the next thought. The mind can't see that eternity exists between these two thoughts. And in fact, eternity exists throughout these two thoughts. But the mind says there's nothing there. One thought just follows the other. But in between those two thoughts, am I aware? Pause. Yes. In that pause, we go to the experience of being aware.
Yes.
We go to the experience, I am aware. Now the I that is aware that it is aware is that awareness. Awareness, as it were, becomes aware of itself. It becomes aware of itself in the absence of thought. That is, in the absence of mind. That is your experience.
Yes, but I have never had that. I totally get it, and I've done it many times in front of the famous YouTube. But I've never done it without a body-mind. I know the body-mind, and especially the mind, is not present at that moment.
How do you know, in between these two thoughts, that you have a body-mind? Or that you are a body-mind? It's only when thought returns that it says, in eternity, in this gap between two, I still existed as a body-mind.
Yeah, true.
But we don't know that.
No.
That is the deep conviction. I mean, you're absolutely right to be following this line of thought, because what you are coming up against is our deep conviction that matter lasts. There is something called matter, out of which this is made, that runs continuous throughout our experience, and that continues to exist between two appearances of the mind, although it is not our experience.
No.
Our experience is that the body, like the mind, is an intermittent object that comes and goes, and that awareness is the reality that runs underneath. Thought tells us that matter is the reality that runs underneath, and that awareness comes and goes. It's not our experience.
No, not true. It felt very helpful to get away from the old matter conviction, to actually discover that all experiences are very close, even though they, in the conventional way, took place 20 or 30 years ago. They are still very, very close to awareness. It's actually quite possible. It takes a little time and effort, but it's very possible to get that. Also, feelings and sensations and smells.
Let me just give you another thought for you to ponder on. We've done this experiment with thoughts. Now, do the same thing with a sensation. A sensation, you understand, is like a thought. It's an intermittent appearance. Likewise, a perception, a sight, a sound, a taste. They start and they stop. Yeah. So, what is there in between two sensations? When one sensation ends and the next sensation begins, what is there between the two?
Just awareness.
And between two perceptions?
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see, thought tells us it's the world that continues in between all these intermittent appearances. That thought is projecting the reality that truly belongs to consciousness onto the world. It's giving the world its own reality and overlooking itself. In fact, it's the other way around. In fact, they happen simultaneously. As it overlooks its own reality, it has to confer its own reality on something. Something else has to take it. It gives its reality to the world. It says the world made out of matter is real. Matter continues, and I, awareness, am intermittent. It changes place with the world. Physicists have never found this stuff called matter. Psychiatrists have never found this stuff called mind. Why do you think that is?
It's not there.
All that's there is infinite consciousness. A few physicists are beginning to say this.
Yes.
But you're on the right track. Keep exploring your experience in this way.
Thank you.